Hey everyone, Reid Henrichs of Valor, and in light of the occupier of the White House, recent comments, a little bit disturbing, time for a history lesson to help rectify the situation. Let's go ahead and get started. Folks, we're coming up here into July nearly, and if you've been following any bit of news and been following any part of what the individual occupying the White House has been doing this year, you'll look at it and it's easy to get frustrated. I don't even get frustrated or mad anymore. At this point, I'm simply resolved to train as many people as possible in the use of firearms, to help them become as proficient as possible, and to educate people when it comes to United States history as accurately as possible. And here the problem is that, as John Adams used to say, facts are stubborn things. And I really want you guys to maybe think about shifting your mental framework when it comes to receiving news or hearing about news or whatever the official position of the United States government is. I found that most times, not all, but most times, whatever the government does, whatever they accuse the citizens of this country of doing, or whatever they accuse the political opposition of doing, they are far more likely to be guilty of that crime than the group or individual that they're accusing. For example, the White House has put out a lot of statements about domestic terrorists or extremists or whatever. If we really look at the definition of terrorism, it's very, very simple. The definition of terrorism, and if you want to paraphrase it, you can also look up the official FBI's definition of that. That's available on their website. But what they're doing is using in threats, force, or intimidation to achieve a political goal. And that's exactly what the position of the Biden White House is. It is designed to marginalize people that believe in the Constitution, that believe in this country, that believe in the foundational heritage of this nation, which includes individual rights and self-responsibility independent of government. That's what our founders believed in, and that's certainly what I believe in. And when we look at how these things happen, we are looking at an individual who's occupying the White House. We're looking at an individual who's been in government for over 50 years. We're looking at an individual of government accusing his political opposition of being quote-unquote terrorists. His recent comments about firearms owners, specifically those that have ARs or any other semi-automatic rifle, saying, if you're going to take on this government, you need F-15s and nuclear weapons. Well, that's kind of weird, coming from the commander-in-chief, supposedly, of a military that has yet to win a war in Afghanistan, that has yet to secure Iraq, against those same people, against the most technologically advanced military on the planet for the last 20 plus years. So, quite disingenuous. And I'll tell you something else. People that have used rifles, the modern weapons of the day, they're helped birth this country. Our founding fathers and the people that fought in the American Revolution did exactly that. Biden's got this penchant for saying things that his handlers tell him to say. Here's another problem. All those AR-15s that he demonizes, they do a hell of a good job protecting him every day, don't they? You know, all the Secret Service people that have AR-15s, that use those short-barreled rifles that he wants to make illegal, all those ARs he wants to make put on a national gun registry or outright confiscate. They do a hell of a good job protecting the President of the United States. So, reason would deduce that they would also do a good job protecting individual citizens of this country. The occupier in the White House continues to say that there were gun control measures in the very beginning of the Second Amendment. There was always restrictions. Hey, you know what, Joe? I agree with you. However, those restrictions were specifically designed for slaves and Native Americans. In other words, people that the government didn't want to have guns because they feared those people having guns, because then it didn't give them a monopoly on force. Every free individual back then did not have any restrictions on firearms whatsoever. The only restrictions that were put in place on the Second Amendment, as I said before, was against those people in this country that the government did not want to have guns due to a fear of not being able to control them. So yeah, the restrictions were there, but it wasn't for free citizens. Free citizens could in fact buy any guns that they wanted to, equal to the military firepower at the time. In fact, when you look at what the militia was designed to be, me, the militia was designed to be identical to what the military was, because there was no militia separate from the military. Both of them had a dual responsibility of safeguarding this country. The militia inside of state borders, and then of course the military to be used to protect the border of the country, as well as the naval aspect of the military. So arguing about that, he says you couldn't just go out and buy a cannon. Well, Joe, that's once again where you're wrong. In the United States, in the American Revolution, the vast majority of ships in this country, including privateers, which are private citizens that served in a capacity on the seas, did have privately owned cannon. A substantial amount of people had cannon as private items. In fact, at Lexington and Concord, in the town of Concord, the British did seize cannon, or attempted to. That's one of their missions, is there to go get the cannon that the private militia, the colonial militia, actually had. So, Joe, I don't know where you learned history. I know you probably went to some fancy-dancy little school. Maybe they didn't teach you that in history in the Ivy League or whatever the hell it is that you went to go get indoctrinated. But the problem is that you don't have evidence on your side. See, books I've read on the American Revolution number, I don't know, several dozen. And in all of those, you can definitely find the facts where people did in fact have cannon. So yeah, you could just go out there and buy a cannon before the Second Amendment. And even after the Second Amendment was instituted, or when it was ratified in 1791, yes, you could. And in fact, there wasn't gun control. The point of the Militia Act of 1792 in relation to the Second Amendment in 1791 is that every able-bodied free citizen was to have a firearm in working order, as well as a prerequisite number of rounds. And if a person could not buy that in the free market with their own money, they were given one at the public expense. So the government back then wasn't seeking to control the amount of arms in people. If they did seek to control, it was in the positive as to far as arming and equipping the citizens in this country. So once again, Joe, sorry to burst your bubble, man. You may not remember it after you hear it 5 minutes later, but want to get that information out there and make sure everybody understands that. By the way, the Second Amendment is designed to protect against tyrannical government, not to take on a government proactively, but to certainly protect against rights infringed. When you really look at that, that's not really a stretch. And if he was so convinced that ARs didn't do anything, why would he want to take them away from us? What I will tell you, though, is that unarmed populations certainly can't take on a tyrannical government. All one needs to look at is the Soviet Union, or Germany in the 1930s, or China under Mao, or Cambodia under Pol Pot, or Cuba under Castro, or North Korea under Kim. So yeah, unarmed populations certainly can't take on a government. So if people with AR-15s can't do that, then an unarmed population certainly can't do that. So he just made the case for individual firearms ownership in this country. He, in his idiotic, incompetent, demented condition, just made the sole case for people having AR-15s, which is not only to protect against tyrannical government, but also to provide self-defense for one's family and home. So unarmed populations certainly don't stand a chance against an overreaching tyrannical government. People with semi-automatic firearms certainly stand a far, far greater chance against stopping that. And last but not least, folks, make no mistake about it, any restrictions or regulations against private ownership of firearms in this country to be used in a militia capacity is in fact treason. The definition of treason is aiding and abetting the enemy during a time of war, and any law or regulation that minimizes the effectiveness of the militia, what that does is that empowers our enemy in order to harm the United States. You need to understand, start questioning claims by people in power, because just because they say it, that doesn't mean that it's true. When anybody can read history books, National Archives, documents, founding fathers' writings themselves, it's all out there, and what they say is the complete and utter opposite of what the occupier in the White House is saying right now. And I'll end this video by saying this, that every single person watching this should be ready, able, and willing to support and defend your home, your family, and your country, and to pledge allegiance to the Constitution, because we are guaranteed a Republican form of government in here, and anything that threatens that needs to be met with resistance. By whatever you want to take that as, resistance verbally, politically, whatever you want to do it. The last leg of defense of the Constitution of this country is the very individual or individuals watching this video right now. And you need to be ready. That means your equipment needs to be ready. Clean, lubricated, zeroed, in good working order, functional. You need to be able. That means you have to have the proficiency to do this. That means you have to put the rounds where they need to go, when they need to go there. And you need to be willing. And that means willing here and willing here. And that decision-making matrix is up to each and every individual right out that is watching this video right now. We're coming up on Independence Day in a very short amount of time. And I want you to understand what that means in your heart and what our ancestors were willing to do against a tyrannical, horrifying government that tried to strip our ancestors of natural rights, rights that predated any government, rights that predated any single thing written on a piece of paper, and that are in fact inherent to your humanity. And I want you to understand what our ancestors were willing to do, and they were not only willing to stand up and fight, but they were ready, willing, and able to bring about a new nation that reflected that desire, that deflected that absolute inherent yearning for freedom that the government that's in charge of us right now has no idea and is so tone deaf over that they wouldn't know it if it hit them in the face. And folks, if you want to learn how to do this better, and you want to learn not only the how of firearms training, but why, then you need to come out to Valor Ridge for one of our pistol and rifle classes, and we will help spool you up and educate you on this stuff. If you found the information in this video helpful, subscribe to the channel, follow me on Facebook, that link is down below. And we'd love to see you in class, either this year or in the future. Have a wonderful Independence Day if I don't talk to you until then. And this is Reid Henrichs reminding you the lessons that we learn are written on the tombstones of others. We'll see you on the ridge.